Would you define one or more of your past relationships as abusive?
I've only ever had one abusive relationship, and it stood out a mile from every other relationship I've ever had.
I just remember being swept away, and early on in the relationship I felt quite loved for the first time, which was kind of like a new experience.
I think there's a book that even refers to it, and it's titled The Term Walking on Eggshells, and that's how you feel. You just don't want to set them off, and you don't know where the eggshells are. They're everywhere, but there are landmines there as well, and you really don't want to step on one of those and set them off.
What initially attracted you to that partner?
His confidence, his humour, his easygoing nature.
He was big and strong and very creative, and we were very like-minded, so I just thought I'd hit the jackpot.
Perpetrators start off in the relationship doing something called love bombing, and that's where they shower you with compliments and make you feel like you're the only one in the world for them. You're their dream come true. And so by the time their coercive behaviour starts, you feel like this is the best relationship ever. This is the person you want to marry and spend your whole life with, because they've made it so very wonderful at the start.
We just got on really well. We were completely different from each other, and we had very little in common, but I think it was a case that opposites attract.
I fell pregnant when I was 20, and as soon as that kind of happened, he changed into a different person, and that's when the controlling behaviour started.
It's like when you're driving and you go over a speed bump and you didn't see it. Or not even a speed bump, just a bump in the road. So your drive's going smoothly and you suddenly feel, oh! And then you carry on driving. And you don't get out the car and, well, you might do if you think you've hit something terrible, but we're assuming it's just something minor in the road, and it jolts the car. Unless you go over something massive that makes you hit the roof of the car and spill coffee over yourself, you don't get out of the car and see what you went over.
First sort of main thing that I remember happening in one of them was I can't remember what I had done, but I was told that I had to stay in the house, and all sort of like electronics, anything so that I could contact anyone outside the house was removed, and I couldn't talk to anyone. And I was told that I couldn't go to college, and I started failing college because I wasn't allowed to go. And then I completely failed the whole entire course, so I couldn't continue my education. And I think that was the first sort of signal, I guess.
I kind of cast myself adrift and made myself quite vulnerable, just through naivety. And somebody who behaved as though they were my friend and were going to help me sort the situation It turned out was distancing me from friends and just people that I knew. And at that point, when I was quite reduced to being dependent on this person, turned quite almost overnight very abusive, let's just say.
So coercive control, which means pressuring and forcing somebody into doing what you want them to do on a day-to-day basis, became an offence in December 2015 in this country, well, in England and Wales, and then in 2018 in Scotland and Northern Ireland. So it's defined by your intimate partner or family member having a severe negative impact on your ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities, like being able to go out, do things, say what you want to say, wear what you want to wear without feeling any worry or pressure or fear.
And I can really remember being very shocked when he told me to shut up. And shut up is incredibly mild, really, but it was meant. It was absolutely meant. And I would never, ever, ever say that to someone. It'd be much more in a kind of fun way. Oh, shut up! Don't be ridiculous. It's that kind of. It's not shut up and vicious. The way he spoke to me was suddenly vicious and out of nowhere, and it brings you up sharp. You stop.
Somebody who's a dominating, controlling character can instill fear into somebody in what seems like, to anyone else, to the outside world, that nothing much is going on. But really, there is, it's looks, it's reactions to things, it's the overall environment, the overall tone of voice that's used, and often, victims will speak about, well, it was just easier not to go out because of the level and the barrage of criticism that somebody would face and questioning and, intense scrutiny and questioning of their movements if they were to go out somewhere independently. It just isn't worth the hassle for when they come home, because they're then subjected to the third degree. And so it leads the person to think, well, I just won't bother. I won't go out, I'll stay home.
Do you believe abusers act purposefully in their methods?
Yeah, I do.
What do you believe is their motive for abusing others in such an intimate relationship?
It's the power. It's the kicks they get out of it, and that sounds really strange that someone could treat someone in that kind of fashion, but he lauded all the time. He got off on it.
We just had a good social life. We got on really well together, and so that was really the start of it.
So that felt easy at the beginning?
It was in that sense, but I've got to say that even from very early on, when we first started dating, the signs were very clearly there that she was a wrong 'un.
I lost my sense of identity of who I was. Some of my friends even, I just went quiet. I would watch TV, for instance, or watch comedy, and I wouldn't laugh. I just went into myself.
A common example of coercive behaviour is when somebody is so fearful that that person could report the behaviour that they basically go with them wherever they go. So any GP appointments, any appointments to sign documents for a new car, shopping, any opportunity for that person to have contact with the outside world is then removed by the perpetrator insisting on being present at all meetings and opportunity, and so there's no opportunity effectively for a victim to speak out to anybody.
4 months before I left, I woke up in hospital one morning and I just had his face over my face, telling me to keep my mouth shut, not to say anything, don't say what happened, and I couldn't move my hands, couldn't move my legs, and he was just saying, you can't say anything, just be quiet, let me talk, let me do this.
As coercive control escalates, perpetrators will create a lot of negative reaction if you try to see your family and friends. So they'll say to you, if you really loved me, you would want to spend your time with me rather than with these other people. They'd say that you're not committed to the relationship if you want to go and see your friends.
This person was incredibly manipulative. There was one occasion she tried to get me to kill somebody. This is somebody who had just simply stolen some sunglasses from me. I was a bit irate and mentioned I could really kill him or something. And she said, you couldn't. I said, well, I could, I'm angry. No, you couldn't. And in the end, this conversation went on for ages until she said, I can get a gun. I can take this person somewhere that no one can see anything. Prove that you could kill him. And at that point, obviously, you realise that this is quite well screwed up.
Perpetrators have taken control over somebody's phone, either simply by taking it off them and giving them no choice about it, or by installing a specific app on the phone so that they can mirror and see what's on that person's phone and actually control the phone almost remotely from a specific app. And often the victim has no idea that their partner is able to control their phone in that way. But there have been examples where people have sent text messages to their friends and it looks as if it's coming from them when it isn't. It's actually their partner controlling it. And they're saying things like, I don't want to have any contact with you anymore. I've moved on, and and trying to sort of end those friendships on their behalf. So then, the victim doesn't understand why their friends aren't then phoning them back. When actually it's the perpetrator who's infiltrated their telephone and has controlled their text messages.
I found that what I did, which is appalling and such self-harm in hindsight, is if he said something terrible to me, I would show no effect from it, because I didn't want him to know how much he'd hurt me, because that would hurt him. Now that is deeply warped, I now know.
While in the relationship, did you discover any strategies or ways of coping with the abuse better?
Yeah. In one instance, I went into the kitchen and there was knives all lined up. And I just went in there and I said to him, what are you doing? And he said, I'm just choosing what knife for each of you. So there was 6 knives. And I said, which one's mine? And mine was the big bread knife. And he said, this is yours. And I said, don't be stupid. I said, that's too big. It's too big. You need something small and sharp, a peeler. Get the peeling knife, that will be it. So he said, why? I said, there's too much blood with a bread knife. I was like, you'll be hacking, all this. So just do the peeling knife. In, out, done. Cut a vein, gone. And he said, yeah, you're right. Yeah, well done. That's really good. Well done. You've just highlighted that. Yeah, I'll use yours will be the peeler. And I just stood there, and then he said, would you like a cup of tea? And then that situation was over with. So I found if I didn't show fear, and I kind of joined in with that conversation and proved a different point that he agreed with, then the situation was kind of over.
The important thing is that whatever the perpetrator is doing, they're doing it with a purpose, which is to get control of you and to keep that control permanently. So all their abusive tactics that they're using, whether it's making you feel down and low and useless or taking away your money, all of that is about getting control over you. And any physical violence they use is to send a message to you, do what I say or else. So you become more cooperative, less resistant, more submissive, and they get what they want, which is a kind of servant-like figure who just exists to serve and please them, and who has no needs or wants or rights of their own.
So, if you could you give me a definition of what abuse is?
Telling you where you can go, what you can and can't do, who you can and can't see, what you're allowed to wear, in the case of ladies, you know, no makeup, what are you dressing yourself up like that for, who are you going out to see, that kind of thing.
I like to think of it as anything where you're causing another person upset or harm, and that can be physically or it can be just emotionally.
When someone either says something or it's an action that someone does towards you and you ask them to stop or to stop saying the words because they upset you, they offend you, they hurt you, and they carry on.
To take away someone's joy, to take away someone's self-respect is abusive to me. To not let somebody be who they are.
It's just that power of them looking down and demoralising somebody that you just, that's what he got out of it. I can't speak for everybody, but that's what he loved that. He loved the power of seeing someone crumble.
Abuse is an attack on the core of another person, of attacking them for their most fundamental values and the very basic tenets of who they are.
So did you actually speak to anybody about the experiences you were going through?
No, I didn't even tell my best friend. I just kept it to myself.
Does that make you feel lonely at the time? Yeah, I was lonely, but I was also very embarrassed that I'd chosen this monster of a man and had children with him, and I kind of got myself into this situation, and I kind of lived for the next chapter in my life. I kind of just thought, when the kids are not babies anymore, it'll be better. Or when the kids go to play school, it'll be better. When the kids go to school, it'll be better. When the kids leave home, he will be better. And did it ever get better?
No, he didn't, no.
Relationships are complex. They're not straightforward. They're not black and white. So there are plenty of abusive relationships which also have very good happy moments as well, positive aspects in the relationship. And so it's not always obvious for somebody to say, well, this has been happening, therefore I will make that decision to leave. There are also often economic consequences, and particularly we find in cases where women are victims, if they are reliant on their partner economically, so they don't pay the rent in their own right, they're staying in somebody else's home, or they're not on the mortgage, then it's very difficult to suddenly decide to leave that environment when you've not necessarily got anywhere else to go to. If you then add children into the mix as well, there's often a huge amount of guilt with the person who's trying to leave that relationship and thinking they're breaking up the family. And often people will try and stay in unhappy abusive relationships because they think that's better for the children. And so there are many reasons why somebody would stay in a relationship like that.
It's important to realise that just because you might be physically the bigger, stronger person in the relationship makes you no less vulnerable to abusive behaviour from an abusive partner. They are still able to be a threat to you because items in the house can become weapons, saucepans, knives, and so forth. And it's more difficult for you to respond or react if they do become physically violent or aggressive, because it's harder for you if you have to restrain them or constrain them in any way to argue that you were only acting in self-defense, because you'll be seen as the bigger, stronger person. And it's harder for people to understand that if she weighs 8.5 stone and you weigh 12 stone, that she was the aggressor. But the fact is this, certainly through my time talking to the police officers from the domestic abuse unit, they deal with many, many cases where the men are the victims of abuse. You're not alone in this, and there is no shame or embarrassment in coming forward. I, along the way, made sure that by the time I was in a position to speak up and speak out, I'd gathered enough evidence to protect myself in the event that she were to try to turn the tables and make allegations against me. I'd managed on occasions to make audio recordings of her whilst she was shouting at me, swearing at me, and abusing me. I took photographs of items in the house that she damaged. That gave me material that if she tried to turn the tables on me, I'd have the evidence to be able to show anybody who needed to see it that actually whatever image she's portraying to you as a helpless, defenseless person, this is what goes on behind closed doors. Look at this, listen to this. The person you're seeing is not the person that I was having to deal with.
How did the relationship come to an end?
He had quite a few affairs. He was always very sorry after it, always promised it would never happen again. And I put up with it. I don't know why. I just kind of thought, right, okay, maybe he'll turn a corner and maybe this will be the one time that he says, oh my goodness, I do love you and I don't want to be this person. But that never happened. So, and then he met this one lady and yeah, he that was it, he left the house.
There did come a time when I was out socially with two friends and they were talking about their own experiences, And I just came out with it, and I don't know why, but I did. I just said, well, actually, I'm in an abusive relationship now. And that's the first time that I'd opened up to anyone. And it was one of the best things that I could have possibly done, even though I hadn't planned it or intended to do it, because the weight it takes off your shoulders is indescribable. The simple act of telling somebody else what you've been through or you are going through is hugely uplifting, and that was really a significant moment for me.
Well, I felt absolutely amazing when I drove off. I just couldn't believe it. I felt like on a massive high, but I was scared in case he'd woken up and would come after me. I knew if he woke up, the reason I left him when he was asleep is because I knew if he woke up, he would have turned on the charm. He was very charming. He could be very charming, and he would turn it all on, pretend, because I feel he only pretended to love me, and I would weaken and soften and go back. Or he threatened to commit suicide a few times as well.
I started making a friend online, and they told me that it wasn't right, and actually made me realise that it wasn't right and that it wasn't normal. And then eventually, months down the line, they was like, okay, you need to start thinking about what you're going to do now. And it was only that person that helped me sort of get in contact with my mum to get her to come and pick me up, just to remove me from it so that I didn't have to keep going back.
There'd been moments where I'd caught myself looking in the mirror at what I saw as a really miserable face, and would tell myself that I wasn't happy. But it was this day in particular that I don't know why the strength was there, and it was heartbreaking to do. Out of something that could be so joyful, I could see what the end was, and made it a day to remember. Put it that way.
These methods of coercive control are also used by soldiers in war to break down the enemy and to brainwash them into submission, to change their minds about what they believe. If trained soldiers who've been through several years of military training and have long histories of combat can be negatively affected by coercive control, can be coercively controlled, then anyone can be, anyone at all. It's not a sign of weakness or a sign that you did something wrong if you were targeted by a coercive controller. It's something that anyone can be subjected to, and anyone who gets out the other side of that, even if it took 20 years, they are some of the strongest people on the planet. And if I had my way, there would be parades, there would be medals, the way that we have with the military, because it's like you've been through your own personal war, and the trauma that you come out with, the PTSD that you often come out with, is the same as what people come back from war with. So it's very similar, and yet where is the celebration that these people have survived and how awesome they are to have done that? There's almost nothing. So yeah, I think anyone who survives that, even if it takes 20 years, whether it takes 2 months or 2 years or 20 years to escape, it's anyone who survives that has done amazing.
Now I've left, I've been able to build a proper relationship with my family again after being cut off from them for years. I have completed my college qualifications that I wasn't allowed to, and I am now a qualified chef and a working chocolatier with my own small business.
No tears to wipe away, no bruises to hide. You walked out of my life and I've just come alive. Be brave, be honest, be free. Be the fuck whoever you want to be.
My house has always been my sanctuary. She took that away. Now she's gone. Peace has returned.
Freedom was a scary place. I had to learn how to be me again. However, leaving him was the best and the hardest thing ever. I now have my confidence, my friends and family back again, and I feel epic.
You're out of my head. An eradicated disease. Your dark psychotic treacle gummed my mind, slowed all thought, withered action, until freedom flushed you away. You are barely a speck in the rearview mirror as I whir and create and live, cherishing the gift that I am not like you and will not spare one atom to anyone like you again.
Try to get some joy in your life, and if it means getting out and disrupting things for a while, try and find a way that you can do that with all the practicalities that are involved.